That's great.
Yeah, I know, because I used to work on John.
Yeah, it's cool. Plus the service is really
Yeah,
great.
I always get like
When they
free
came
check
over to
two
visit from
free
years
check
ago,
bags and
I'm like, well, let's go,
and
let's go,
like
let's go. I said, hold it, hold it.
Okay, so anytime at 7:30.
Oh, well,
Start there.
there's that bush there that
Janet.
Right,
sticky
Jen?
weed.
So anytime you wanna go, it's
It's
7:30.
my screen for all the dogs that pee on it.
Did you
Yeah, yeah,
register
yeah,
that?
I saw you, I know, I
I
said
just
yes.
couldn't tell. Okay,
Yeah,
cool. All right.
Yeah,
I can read, I just thought.
I was looking for you. But,
Oh, right
no,
here,
right
oh,
now.
because I happened to see it last week, so, oh.
Yeah, 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 you know.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Good? Oh, come on. We could do a little bit better than that.
Oh, fantastic.
How are we doing, everybody? Good? It's so great to see everybody today. My name is Rob Chua. I am a longtime supporter of the Alvarado Project. Once upon a time, I worked for the state legislature and I had the honor of presenting a certificate of recognition as I did many nights. But one night, I had the distinct pleasure of giving one of those certificates of commemoration to Janet Alvarado. Little did I know that that would start off a chain events of me doing a lot of free work for her. As a lot of you, this is like the alumni association of everybody that's ever done free work for Janet. But listen, it's been a love affair, a family affair, as this room, is proving to be a room of loved ones, a room of family, and a room of people who really value culture and what this project has meant for the city, the state of California. I see Joe Cowan in the back, and beyond. So with that, I kind of did want to just take a moment and say happy birthday to Ricardo Alvarado. Who when was the birthday, Janet? His birthday?
2 days ago, on the 7th.
2 days ago.
February 7th, 1914.
That's right. So this is a little bit of a birthday celebration. Sadly, we don't have spaghetti or cake, but we do have some bottles of water in the back and a lot of memories and beautiful images to commemorate the project. And so let's get the evening started. Just real quick, I don't know where the restroom is, but the exits are there. The restrooms are here over yonder. So if you need to go take a break, some refreshments in the back as well if you need to hydrate. So here we go. So tonight will be a book reading. And I love these and I love the setting of tonight. So thank you, Bird and Beckett, for hosting us this evening. This is truly a magnificent San Francisco institution, as you can tell. If only these walls could talk. And if there were only more bookstores like this that still existed, I think we would be far better off as a society, especially if we all read and did our part and bought independent. So if you can buy independent books, please do. You're all VIPs tonight. I do see Mr. John Calloway, who was present and a contributor to our last event at the Bayview Opera House, which is incredible. Was that December?
May.
May? What was it?
For Pacific Islander Month.
Oh my gosh.
We did a collaboration.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. That's a year ago from now.
Almost a year ago. So I will. I talked a little bit about kind of getting started with the Alvarado project, but there's no one like Janet to kind of introduce kind of the work of her dad. I will just quickly read a bio from Ricardo Alvarado, just to kind of level set and understand where the work comes from and his perspective, and then I'll kick it off to Janet to do a reading from the book from the Venerable Emil Guillermo. So, Ricardo Alvarado arrived in California in 1928 as a 14-year-old in the first wave of Filipino immigrants, working as a janitor and houseboy. He enlisted in the U.S. Army, 1st Filipino Infantry Regiment in 1942. And after serving in combat in the South Pacific during World War II as a medic, he became a civilian cook, actually at the San Francisco's Letterman Army Hospital. For 20 years, he studied the city and nearby rural areas in his free time with his view camera in hand, recording Filipino community life at dances, banquets, baptisms, funerals, and other gatherings. And in 1959, Alvarado ended his work in photography and returned to the Philippines to marry Norberta Magallanes. They had 2 children, Janet and Joseph Alvarado, who currently live in San Francisco. And when he died in 1976, Ricardo Ocredo Alvarado left an archive of nearly 3,000 rare photographs, a vital portrait of early Filipino Americans. I often talk to Janet and tell her that this is her dad's work is Americana. It's Filipino American history. It's very distinct from Filipino history. It's not the same. So I think we should sort of put the work in the context of that to understand that through the viewfinder, he was able to look at San Francisco through a very unique lens where our communities actually did get along. Our communities did intermingle. We took care of each other. We went to dances together. We ate together, broke bread. And so I think it's in that honor and spirit that Janet has really taken that work forward. She's been a tremendous steward of the collection for many, many years. And I'm proud to call her a friend and someone that I talk to probably more than my own mother. So that's a true story. It's true. And so before I bring up Janet to the stage, I do want to, where did I put that bio? There's so many bios, y'all. I will read a bio from Emil Guillermo, who Janet will be reading from. And here it goes. Emil Guillermo writes on issues of race for the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund, ALDEF. He's the winner of an American Book Award for Amok, his collection of essays in the year 2000. He was the first Filipino to host a national news program when he was with NPR's All Things Considered. And so Janet's going to read from Emil Guillermo's work. And so with that, let me get a round of applause for Janet Alvarado. Come on in, Janet. Watch out.
I know, I see. I'll take my coat off in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to try not to move so I don't make a squeaky noise, and I have my mask on. I'm coming past a cold, so I'm not contagious. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. And a happy birthday, Dad. And later on, maybe afterwards, we have some snacks in the back. And there is a restroom there I saw. So I'm just going to read the introduction I wrote to this book. It was a collaboration, and I'm going to just give a little background, and then I'll dive into the story, because it's our maiden voyage to actually do a nice formal book reading in a venue. And thank you, Eric, for allowing us to come in here and do this tonight. So with that, this project was supposed to be a 3-part project. Compositions was the title of the exhibition, and it was done and shown at the San Francisco Library History Center on the 6th floor in 2014, following the previous show in 1998 through My Father's Eyes, which traveled around the country with the Smithsonian Institution back when. And this was sort of an homage and nod back to Through My Father's Eyes to honor my mother. And she's gone to heaven, and she just passed away several years ago. The year after this show opened, she passed forward. So I'm so grateful to God that I was able to collect these stories. And I'm grateful to the writers here that contributed for free. And I love you all, and thank you for still being here. And we'll get into this later, but I'm kind of begging John Calloway to be part of the Stanford exhibit in May, which you all are invited to. So I'm going to start reading this book before I really start crying. But anyway, thank you. Happy birthday to Dad. And again, congratulations to all the artists that are here and those who aren't here, because we really are on their shoulders. They're very celebrated writers, literary writers. Oscar Peñaranda, our friend Bill Sorrow. And these are the people we are honoring also in this book. So maybe you'll enjoy these little tidbits tonight. Introduction by me, June 3rd, 2014. A journey began in 1997. Just a few friends from the city. At the time, at age 37, I was considered the underling, while my peers, native San Franciscans alike, were starting to live out their piece of the American dream, establishing families, owning homes, raising 2.5 kids. Some were yuppies, others running for political office, setting up businesses, or creating art. Returning to San Francisco State University for a degree in design, I showed up at community events around San Francisco, as the brothers Al Robles, Bill Sorrow, and Emil de Guzman started planting seeds of Manilatown. It was the height of the first dot-com boom in the Bay Area, with budding urban projects changing our cityscape. I first met Emil Guillermo at a town hall meeting for the iHotel Planning Committee's Manilatown project to be realized on 868 Kearney Street at the Mendelsohn House on Folsom and 3rd Street in the 1990s. I recalled seeing Emil Guillermo back in the late 1970s, early 1980s on television as a news reporter with KRON TV. When Manila Town Hall meetings were over, we would find ourselves talking about our childhoods over coffee and key lime pie at Max's Diner across the street by South Park, where Kearney Street Workshop was located then. By sharing our stories, we quickly discovered we were connected because all of his slightly younger cousins, the Guillermo family, on his Uncle Mel's side, were my closest high school friends. I went to St. Paul's. Emil went on to publish his first book, Amuck, and I created an exhibit. Emil did write some columns in the ethnic media about the project, but we really didn't connect until 17 years later. In 2013, we seemed to pick up where we left off. We were in different places and had done different things, but just as when we met, we simply began talking about our families and different projects. This time, we began to collaborate in earnest. In October 2013, he graciously volunteered to MC a community event hosted by the San Francisco Philippine Consulate, officially announcing the passage of Senate Concurrent Resolution 20, SRC 20, Leyte Landing. In February 2014, I asked Emil to write for our dad's birthday. Emil wrote the following story entitled Centennial Club Members, Ricardo and Willie, Filipinos in the Heart of San Francisco. When I first met Janet Alvarado in the mid-1980s, she was just like me, a young American-born Filipino, only she had a box of photographs and a dream. The photographs were taken by her dad, Ricardo Alvarado. The dream was to share his vision. Almost 30 years later, it's all come true. The Alvarado Project, as it's called, has been honored by the Smithsonian, toured around the country, and is about to grow in scope with another chapter, this time honoring Alvarado's wife, Norberta, and her beloved Leyte. But first things first, Ricardo Alvarado would have been 100 years old on February 7. It's only fitting to close this chapter by honoring Ricardo Alvarado's centennial year. I must admit, when I first saw his photographs, I didn't grasp how special they were. Why would they be? They were shots of my neighborhoods that Filipinos lived in. Images of parties Filipinos attended. They looked like me. They looked like my life in San Francisco in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, my American and Filipino life. Silly me. That's what gives them their power. The photographs recall the specialness of life that few regarded as special back then. It was just us. Who was looking at American Filipino life like it mattered back then? Before Asian American studies or ethnic studies, before there was a sense of pride within the American community. Not many. Ricardo Alvarado was in the first wave of immigrants to San Francisco. He came to America looking for opportunity in 1928, but instead he found that people wanted to shut the door almost as soon as he arrived. It was the Depression. The height of racism and violence toward Filipinos came in 1930. In San Francisco, we were called monkey. No one thought that the community was particularly photogenic back then. Typical of many Filipinos, Ricardo Alvarado endured and was able to join the army. After World War II, he returned to marry a Filipina, start a family, and buy a home in San Francisco. And the community blossomed. And I'm going to skip a little bit. If you'd like to hear more of the story, you can maybe pick up a book, and here we go. More, let's see. Well, I'm just going to continue. More than snapshots and the lineups most people took with a Brownie and Instamatic, Alvarado was armed with a view camera documenting and preserving the look of Filipino life. As his daughter realized, the images weren't for people to gaze at then, but more meaningfully, the photography was the bridge from their present to the future so that others could wonder what it was like back then. At best, they represented the most artful photographs of the early American Filipino community in San Francisco, if not the entire United States. So while you may have placed your photos in deep storage or, heaven forbid, throw them out as basura, that means garbage, Janet Alvarado knew that she had something more than sentimental memories. These were lasting images of community that others didn't keep. Even the basic shots of every day make Ricardo's photographs even more special. That's the value of the Alvarado project. We call it diaspora now, but then the global Filipino was a few neighborhoods in San Francisco and other places in California. How did we live? No one thought we were special enough to preserve and document on film, let alone study like some lost tribe in the Philippines. We were more like a new colony in America. After surviving in the 1920s, 30s, and the war, American Filipinos were happy to be alive. Ricardo Alvarado knew that was photogenic. Okay. Who's next? I'll stay here with you for a little while.
Okay. Yeah, you want to come hang out with me, Janet?
Yes.
Okay. We've got Edwin up next here.
Okay, Edwin.
So, thank you, Janet, for that wonderful reading. I think one thing that stood out to me within that passage was that there are few photographers of note that, like Ricardo, were so prolific at creating art, documenting a time in the city, very special time in the city, when even academia was off, busy, cataloging in other places, right? And so, I mean, I studied anthropology. One thing that stands out to me that relates to that is the idea of authenticity and snapshots of culture. And whenever you think about snapshots of culture, I think there's an inclination to think that's what is authentic of that specific place and time, as if history is not constantly moving, as if history is fixed. That's not true. I think if you all can take a look at these photos, and if you have some time after our readings today, please take a look and see how much they relate to our current reality now. I mean, their culture is continuous. It's forever moving. It's always fluid. And so when we take a look at images, I think we should always contextualize them within our current day, our current relationships with our community and time. And so there's some beautiful regularness. I don't know if that's a word. Is that a word? Something really special about taking a snapshot of someone doing regular things on a day-to-day basis. So I think with that, we'll move on to our next reading, which is a story, Babaylan in Playlands by the Sea by Oscar Peñaranda, which will be read by Edwin Lozada, who had the pleasure of working on the Pistan Parade and Festival last year. This man's a legend. Edwin Lozada is an author, poet, and has been an educator in the California public school system for 33 years. He is president of the Filipino American Writers and Artists PAWA, co-director of Filipino American and International Book Festival, and is vice president and curator for the Hinabi Project, the art of Philippine textile. And he's the gentleman with the beautiful Ifugao textiles on him, so very on brand, sir. And the story written by Oscar Peñaranda, who was born in Barugo, Leyte, Philippines, and moved to Vancouver, Canada when he turned 12, and then to San Francisco in his senior year of high school. An educator for over 40 years and a writer for more, and a Filipino even longer. He's written stories, plays, essays, memoirs, and poems on how it feels to be human, being at a certain place in a certain time on this planet. That's the most writer thing I've ever heard. He received the. That's right. He for sure wrote that. He received the prestigious Gawad ng Alagad ni Balagtas in 2012. Say that 5 times fast. Given by the Writers Guild of the Philippines. He has influenced generations through his work in literature, education, and community work. So Edwin, let's invite you up. Round of applause for Edwin Lozada, please. Oh, you can go that way. I'll go this way.
Good evening. So Babaylan and Playland by the Sea. How many of you actually remember Playland? A lot of people. Yeah. Oh yeah. It was sort of scary. Yeah. Yeah, it was just like many of my friends who were saddened when they closed because it's one of the escapes, right? Yeah. So Babaylan and Playland by the Sea. By Oscar. The stupidest thing that the city of San Francisco ever did was to get rid of Playland by the Sea. With its funhouse, fat laughing lady with freckles and red hair, its grand towering Ferris wheel, and the formidable salt and pepper shaker loop, where he, as a teenager, once discovered too late not to have anything in one's pocket because they will fall all down, coins, pens, whatever, when the ride turns you upside down violently and fearfully. Hot dog stands steaming in the night and the carnival atmosphere everywhere and all around. The various sounds, barks of laughter floating in the air. It was a mini Disneyland right across the misty Pacific Ocean. The Great Highway and the Cliff House, a turn of the 20th century restaurant made of brass and dark wood. Unfortunately, Playland was swallowed up by the waves of greed. Speculation, they called it. So they closed it down, built apartments and condos instead to make more money. By the way, I remember once it was torn down, every time I go there, it's like, are they doing anything? It took a while, actually, right? It's like, what's up with this? No. So they closed it down, built apartments and condos instead to make more money. Joy subsided quickly like the foams from among and along those silver-crested waves. No more mermaids beckoned from the sea, where once it shimmered in the summers of the city. The area now is a very quiet place and deserted. Lonesome winds frequent it. Condominiums and apartments were put on the site where Playland used to be. Those apartments and condominiums have never been fully occupied. In due time, desolation took over the place and no children were ever seen near it. That was the day the magic died in Playland by the beach. Songs and stories will be the only remnants of those days. This is one of them. Friday Night Walker called his trusted friend Amador one day during prom season and told him to get ready for a double date that he, Friday, is arranging. You gotta go on a double date with me, pal, he said in his phony Texas Filipino accent. Let me try it again. You gotta go on a double date with me, pal, he said with his phony Texas Filipino accent. Friday Night Walker was a Filipino mestizo whose white U.S. citizen father was in the service and found himself growing up mostly right in the heart of Texas, of all places. His father was transferred to San Francisco only 6 years ago. He got to know everybody fast. He was a very social guy, as you can tell by what folks called him. I don't got a date, Amador reminded him. I know that, answered Friday quickly. I don't know why. You got looks. You look at me. Friday Night Walker. No thanks. I just don't know what it is that they see in me, but it ain't the looks, that's for sure. But I always got a girl, right? And seeing that I knew you wouldn't have one, and seeing that the prom is already this Saturday night, I got you one. He was right, the fucker. Compared to Friday's social life, Amador felt at times that he would languish in loneliness for the rest of his obscure life. It seemed that his Friday's date's parents won't allow the two of them on a date alone. Amador did not know whether the parents had heard of Friday's reputation or not. They would, however, permit her to go on a double date with her girlfriend and family trusted companion, who will turn out to be his Amador's blind date. We'll spend for everything, Friday told Amador. I'll take care of expenses, he said. What about for the date? Amador asked. Not the expenses that don't involve me, pare. You gotta cough that up yourself, brother. I'll just provide the merchandise. You gotta pay for the maintenance. Don't be kuripot, man. Come on. You gotta fork out something. Show some class, man. You're buying her a corsage, right? Amador, the ever accommodating, in his mind, young man of 17 that he was, said, Yes, of course. Amador himself had just graduated. His graduation celebrations and activities were nothing to brag about. In fact, it was nothing at all, period. Just a kiss from his mom and a controlled smile from his father. He had not gone to his school prom, though. The priest, his St. Ignatius high school English teacher, had offered him a couple of names from his list of Mercy High School girls. The same priest had procured him once before for the Sadie Thompson dance. Her name was Ann Farmer, and her straight, long red hair still had him remembering. The truth is that Amador had hinted to his mom about going to the prom, but she picked up on it right away and said, Nothing doing. No money for all these kalukohans. It's not enough that you go to the most expensive school in San Francisco. You have to pick the most expensive event. Ma, this is the prom, and I didn't pick the school. You guys did. Not me, she said, and cast a furtive glance toward his father, who was reading the newspaper while watching the news on the television in the sala, as he, with his Giants baseball cap on, was listening to the baseball game on the radio in the kitchen. They're praying for the whole thing, Ma. Who are they, huh? I guess they're family. Friday's girlfriend's family, or her girlfriend's family. I don't know. All I know is that you are not paying for a centavo, Ma. Wala, libre lahat. Shit, she curtly said. And he kissed her on both cheeks, making giggle noises, and grabbed her shoulder and started massaging it and shaking it until she wrinkled her forehead and started screaming for him to stop. Hoi, hoi! And laughing, he slowly let her go. Shit, she said again, regaining some control and fixing herself up. The ride after the prom was rather quiet. He had danced with his date, Maria, a few times only. He should have danced more, he knew, but it was too late now. Friday pulled over the diner with the big Dachshund hot dog on top of it by 48th Avenue near the Great Highway. Do you guys remember that? Okay. Friday and his prom date quickly disappeared into the Laughing Lady's entrance gate, leaving the two alone. Amador and Maria sat down at a small eating place, and as they were ordering the food, Amador started noticing Maria. And he started listening well to what she was saying as he slowly chewed on his fish and chips with a sprinkling of vinegar. The jukebox was playing Sally Go Round the Roses, and she was humming and oohing a bit. They finished their meals and smiling at each other as the Rockefellers were bursting out Killer Joe. Walked outside into the light-studded mist. They walked somewhat awkwardly through parts of Playland to cross the Great Highway onto Ocean Beach, passing the Laughing Lady, the dart and balloon games, the shooting galleries, and the cotton candy wagons, till they confronted the giant Ferris wheel with all its lights and colors and slow creaking turning. Everything must have been turning in Maria's inside, too, because she suddenly said, Someday I'll have my name in lights. Keystone Corner, Black Hawk, Blue Note. You never know, right? Why not? Sure, why not? He said. You're a good singer. I can tell by your humming. You got soul. I can't sing, but I can tell soulful singing. To sing, I think, to really sing your own, you gotta do it with passion, but you gotta have a broken heart or two under your belt to have that passion, I think. I don't know what I'm saying. She looked up at him, smiling a bit, and took his arms to cross the street to the ocean side. She was looking up at him and beyond him, at the sky, with white-edged clouds bathed and drifting by the silvery moon, sea wind blowing, foaming waves pounding, her chiffon dress puffed, billowing with the billows of the sea. After they've crossed, he said, Hey, Maybe you can teach me to sing. Think it's possible? Can anyone learn? I'm pretty hopeless. I mean, I might scare away all the mermaids into singing off tune. Nonsense. Anybody can sing. My niece is tone deaf and I taught her. Whoa, you're a teacher too. You're gifted. She looked at him straight and clear and kindly. They were stepping on sand now. You're the gifted one. She was looking through and beyond him into the moonlit sea. You'll write about us, and someday people will read them, and someday maybe one will come to know someone like me. You're the gifted one. She moved a little closer to him and walked in his rhythm, taking bigger steps. The waves, the ocean, the sea will wipe them all out immediately. But the spirit of our footprints will still be in these sands because you will write about them. I can tell. I know a little bit about you before from Friday and then. Research is good, right? What before or before when? Before pa. Wow, a budding private investigator too. 77 Census Strip, Hawaii 50, female Ponce Pons. More like Pawai 50. I'm Ilocana. My mother's Tagalog though. She named me after the legendary Maria of Mount Makiling because I was born in the calm right after a storm. I like to know what I'm getting into, of course, before I jump into anything. With a practical and desperate friendly like Friday, one has to excavate a little oral history on his double date choices, she smiled, her red lips accentuating her scarlet and gold shawl. With a slight change of tone, she said, You keep writing. You keep us alive. That's funny, he answered. Everyone tells me to dream another dream, to stop writing. I'll be broke all my life, they say. No one is interested in reading about Filipinos, especially Filipinos. They all tell me. Don't know if I should even consider it now. My own family. Consider it. You talk as if you have a choice. You don't, and you're good. I read some of your poems that you write for your friends, the girl of their dreams, or the object of their lustful affection. Some are too good to send away. I hope you keep all of them. Yeah, some of them won't appreciate the poems, huh? Oh, they'll appreciate them, all right. Every one of them. A girl appreciates those things, but not necessarily for the same reasons. Really? Do they know it's not from their aspiring suitors? Of course they do. Come on. They all know they came from you. I'll make sure to keep them all from now on. They took off their shoes and started laughing. He tried to carry her pair, but she would not let him. It's all right. I'll carry them. They're my shoes, after all. The night was all asplash in spindrifts brought by the wind and waves. They strolled on the sand on the silver-laden seascape. He noticed the moon, though not yet full, was bright, and it made his gaze wander towards the horizon. It was during this gaze that a strange surge of romantic feeling overwhelmed him. It was prom night, after all, and he suddenly swept Maria off her feet and scooped her up, carrying her as they both almost fell. Regaining his balance, he continued carrying her, trying to keep up a conversation. He noticed the silveriness of things as the moon momentarily got in his eye. It took his attention for a split second, and then that was all because a wave, a gigantic one, rose like a monster from the sea, and it was heading straight for them. Terror-stricken and instinctively obeying the most formidable human urge, that of self-preservation, he forgot everything and ran away from the great wave towards the great highway. But of course, he forgot the bundle he had in his arms a few seconds ago, the object of his romanticism. He looked down his empty arms and looked back and saw Maria squirming to get up from the water's edge like a cockroach in his back trying to get right side up. Coming to his senses, he rushed to her, shouting apologies before he even got to her and picked her up. Not just our footprints now, Maria said, laughing, but my body prints too. She brushed off the sand and water from herself. I was shaking like a cockroach out there. Or a mermaid, he said. When he had gathered her in his arms safely and things started to look right side up again, he clumsily added, You're a wise one. With a hell of a sense of humor, too. But you, she touched both his hands and turned them palm up. With those soft hands are the gifted one. Remember that. You're all wet. Just a little. Want to go back to the diner and change in the bathroom? Change to what? my slipper shawl, and then she thought for a while. Why not? I'll just put my coat over it. Come on. No, let's go to the Cliff House. I'll change there. When she came out of the Cliff House, she came out all colorful and babaylan like. She looked like she belonged in the rich, classy Cliff House by her carriage and posture. Yet she did not belong in the Cliff House by her splash of many colors. Too bold, too neatly fit the ambiance. Biblical yet pagan, folkloric yet modern. He never saw her again. And to this day, hard as he might try, he cannot remember an iota of what ever happened to Friday and his date that prom night when he used him as an excuse to satisfy his Friday's concupiscence, his lustful teenage loins. The only thing he remembers clearly of the actual prom itself was that he bought her a lavender corsage, which reminded him of that corny song, of which the only thing he liked was its title, Lavender Blue. Do you remember that song? They both trembled at his pinning the orchid above her left breast. They must have driven home that night to end the date, but he has no memory of her at all. After that night, she came out of the Cliff House. They must have said good night, but he doesn't remember if he kissed her or not. Nothing. That unmentionable for some, the dreaded moment, the price of the prom, that good night kiss. No memory of it all. Just the ocean, the beach, the moon, the wind, the Cliff House, the steaming smell of hot dogs, burnt cotton candies in playland by the sea that disappeared into the mist and recesses of San Francisco history, but not from memory, at least not from his. Oscar Peñaranda.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lozada. My favorite line in there, keep writing, keep us alive. Keep writing, keep us alive. Babaylan also, by the way, means shaman. Babae is the word for a woman. Babaylan, someone, a shaman, able to commune with the spirit world. So it's pretty cool. Our next writer, my friend Larnie San Juan, will be reading from Mr. Alicena, who is the mentor of Jenna Alvarado. So it's a special one. It's going to be called Where the Nurses Have Gone. A little bit about Larnie. She grew up in the Outer Mission neighborhood with her Manong father, who came in the 1920s, and mother, who immigrated in the late 1950s. She worked as a public health nurse for 29 years, finding passion working with low-income families in the communities, in their homes, homeless shelters, or where they want to meet her. She received her bachelor's in nursing at SF State and a master's degree in public health from UCLA Anderson School, I think. Today, she continues to thrive despite health challenges as a best-selling author, entrepreneur, and a mom to her college daughter at Berkeley. And she'll be reading Where the Nurses Have Gone by Mr. Al Acena, the Venerable. Albert Acena, Seattle native and longtime resident of San Mateo County, passed away on October 28, 2019, to become one of our ancestors. He joined the faculty of College of San Mateo in 1966. During his 41 years at CSM, Al taught history, served as the dean of the Division of Social Sciences, and served on numerous campus committees. And he was the advisor for Alpha Gamma Sigma, a community college honor society. I was a board member of the San Mateo County Historical Association and founding member of the Filipino American National Historical Society, FONS, and of course the Alvarado Project. So Larnie, there she is. Come on up. Let's give her a round of applause. Sure.
Hello. Hi. Okay. So this is from Albert Acena. Felicidad and Eladio graduated from Philippine General Hospital Nursing School in 1919. They were both from Vigan in the Ilocano province of Ilocos Sur. Their training at PGH
was marked by a student strike, an unusual event. It stopped classes until grievances were addressed by the hospital administration. After graduation, they went in different directions. Eladio accepted an offer from the Seattle Police Department to be a nurse orderly and was soon off to Seattle. Felicidad stayed in the Philippines, becoming a nurse in the public health system. This brought her mainly to assignments in Mindanao, Zamboanga, Jolo, Sulu, and Davao, as well as to Negros Occidental in the Visayas. Somewhere along the way, she connected with Paula Nonacido from Sorsogon, also a graduate of the nursing program at PGH. In 1926, both Felicidad and Paula responded to a job announcement calling for nurses in the United States. Felicidad's mother, Antonia Ferrarin Nolasco, had recently passed away, and although she had family in the Philippines, Felicidad now felt free to explore opportunities abroad. The two nurses left Manila on September 11, 1926, aboard the Canadian Pacific liner Empress of Russia, stopping in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Yokohama on the way across the Pacific. They disembarked in Vancouver, British Columbia, and took a Canadian Pacific train from which they transferred so that they could enter the United States through North Dakota. Those were the days when Filipinos carried passports showing them to be American nationals. The kicker was they were ineligible for United States citizenship. Soon, Paula and Felicidad were ensconced at City Hospital in Cleveland, where they would remain for a year or so before moving on. It was in Cleveland they experienced their first snowfall. One of the fellow countrymen they encountered in Cleveland was Luis Quiniao, a pioneer Filipino-American journalist. So this chapter that Mr. Asena wrote was actually about his parents. So that was beautiful, and it's really neatly tucked into this book. So that was a passage from his reading.
Did you want to read? There's another one about the San Mateo citation of the 5 women,
Yes. So that was the beginning of the chapter.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, okay. So this chapter was called Where the Nurses Have Gone. When news that a limousine on the San Mateo Hayward Bridge approaching Foster City in California's Bay Area suddenly caught fire, killing 5 occupants, all of them nurses, the whole country was shocked, horrified, and saddened by this incident. It was to be a joyful event they were going to that Saturday evening in May 2013. One of them would soon be traveling to the Philippines to celebrate her church wedding amidst family and friends in her native land. What was to be a happy, fun-filled occasion turned into a tragedy of immense dimensions. 5 women, all nurses, all Filipinas, died in one horrible moment. This was certainly a tragedy with circumstances still hard to comprehend, but it underscored one fact in the fabric of American society: the presence and importance of Filipina and Filipino nurses in caring for the sick, ailing, and recovering in the United States. The loss of the 5 Filipino nurses inspired this writer to relate the journeys of a couple of nurses from the Philippines early in the 20th century. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Go this way? Okay.
So our next reader is part of the Alvarado family. Yes, Alohi Vega Alvarado, who I've grown to be a big fan of since I met her as they were kicking off Alvarado Project X at Manila Town a couple years ago, maybe. And she's proven to be a tremendous force and another steward of the project. So Alohi Vega Alvarado is a native born of Maui, Hawaii. She's an artist, freelance model, and designer. In high school, Alohi pursued live theater, performance, and art. And if you were at the Bayview Opera House, you would have seen her. She made tear up. It was like an amazing hula performance. Tremendous.
You can see it on April 8th.
April 8th, y'all heard it first. And in 2021, Alohi was featured in Underwater Fashions by Justin Drew Fashion Liqueur. Alohi is a third generation Alvarado and comes from a long lineage of creators. And she'll be reading from 1946, written by Reese Alvarado. Reese Alvarado is a freelance writer and nightlife columnist with the San Francisco Examiner. Reese was raised by his mother and grew up with the support of his Filipino family on the quiet island of Maui. In high school, he recognized his ability to write and went to college and then chose to explore the stories he'd found studying journalism. And he's currently penning an autobiography about growing up in 90s Hawaii. And also a quick reminder, by the way, if you all are interested in reading these stories for yourself and spending a little bit more time with the text, please buy a book and buy a couple to get a handful and gift it to your loved ones. So with that, Alohi, come on up. Let's give a round of applause.
Hi, my name is Alohi Nani, but
Welcome back. She just caught on
Yeah.
the plane last night, all the way from Maui,
yeah,
everybody.
I just got here last night. The story was written by Reese Alvarado, which is actually my second oldest brother. He lives here in San Francisco. Yeah. This is 1946. 1946. On a gusty evening, sometime in May, Cristino Alvarado rushed to find a seat in the back row of the town hall, where he immediately settled in, fingers woven in his lap, thumbs pressed one against another, palms sweaty, in the silent desperation found in filled rooms where everyone wants the same thing, but not everyone can have it. This was a big day for some in the poor province of Umingan, Pangasinan. Today's assembly was no ordinary one. Hiring officials from Hawaii Sugar Planters Association, HSPA, were in town to find workers to tend to the tall cane fields, combined by humid breezes during Hawaii's sugarcane boom. Since so many were interested in leaving their impoverished surroundings, men across the Philippines entered a lottery system. Interested in the idea of a glamorized version of plantation life, a $10 advance, free passage, a 3-year commitment, and free plantation housing. Yet there were not enough spots to satisfy the crave. The lottery began. One by one, names were called as local townsfolk teared up at the sound of their own names, hugging their family members as they walked over to a table to sign their lives over to Hawaii plantations to which they would belong. Anything was better than here, he thought, reaching for hope in his empty pockets. Names continued to be called, seeming to be everyone but him. Call Cristino, he prayed, head down, his calloused hands cupping one another. Call Cristino, he continued to whisper. Rafael Arcilla, shouted the Luna, who was nearing his last rounds of the lottery. Cristino lifted his head, halfway happy and halfway jealous for Rafael, a lifelong acquaintance who he grew up with. Rafael Arcilla, the Luna reiterated. Cristino looked around, waiting for Rafael to surface from some corner of the room, jumping for joy as everyone else chosen in the lottery. Rafael Arcilla, the Luna exclaimed, as if his hoarse voice was irritated about the drag Rafael was putting on the process. I'm here, Cristino said, as he stood from the bench in the back and made his way towards the front. In 1946, my great-grandfather, Cristino Alvarado, left his family behind to earn money working the sugar plantation in Kauai and eventually Maui, becoming part of an early wave of Filipino immigrants to come to Hawaii. When Hawaii became a state in 1959, my great-grandfather decided to bring the Alvarado family back to Maui, where they purchased a plantation-style home near the bottom of Wilikona Street, next to the cool waters of the Waikapu River. My family actually still owns that house, and it's beautiful because right at the front entrance, there's this wood carving by the mailbox, and it says Alvarado on it, and that is actually how our Auntie Janet and my family back in Maui and my family in San Francisco actually found out that we were even related, or that we had a connection, just by chance of seeing this mailbox at this house on Wilikona. So it's very beautiful. But yeah, thank you guys.
Quick trivia for y'all. Do you guys know what seminal Filipino work came out in 1946? America's in the Heart, Carlos Bulusan. Was published in 1946, also documenting the struggles of Filipino immigrant farm laborers when there were signs that said dogs and Filipinos not allowed. That was real. So, Janet, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to again thank you. We're going to be done soon. There's food. Please don't fall asleep. Everybody looks like they're having a great time. So thank you for coming, and it's kind of warm in here now. I would take off my jacket. One thing that I really wanted to say was this event, as Rob had said in the very beginning, for those of you who might have missed his remarks, is that we wanted not only to welcome you, but to, yes, honor my dad, honor these memories, tell these stories, share these stories. We encourage people to write their stories. And we're so connected. One of the things that Eric asked me to say to the audience was like, what is it about all of you guys why are you all like homegrown, and how do you all know each other? Miriam's back there with the mask, and she is on the block. Her mother has three places here. One of them was known as a go-to hair parlor for our mothers, DeLary's, right, Marian? So we go back to the root of this community here in San Francisco. I went to St. Paul's. I used to catch the bus over there in front of Le Petit, whatever. It was a bar that burnt down. John Calloway, get this. He's a little older than me, not too much. I went to school with his little sisters. I'm 62. But our mothers sang at the church choir at the parish I grew up at, Corpus Christi, for over 40 years. They founded that in the early Filipino community. And that's how we're very connected. Bill Sorrow's son is here. And they would mentor me. I wasn't like an activist. I went to Catholic school, so I had to do it like, okay, I'm going to volunteer. I'll do your graphic design. And so there was little ways that I came up in this community, and John can relate to that. We just recently collaborated together again. So we are very intertwined, our spirits, our hearts, our stories. And I thank you for coming. Like, Sonia's my friend. She's a recent friend. That's a whole other story. But like Alohi said, these little things that happen. The story is that I didn't find out. My mother's first cousin, was working as an immigrant at the Grand Hyatt Maui, making omelets, and she got invited from her coworker Lilia to go to the house for a party. And when my Auntie Rosie got there, she saw the sign Alvarado in front of the house that Alohi just told you about. And I thought I was an orphan. I mean, I'm a Manong child. We didn't have a lot of family. We didn't even have first relatives here. We were the firstborn American children here in the city, here in California. And Oscar Ernie as well. He's a good friend of the project. So I encourage you to stay and mingle. Ernie's a dear friend. He's born and raised in San Francisco, retired public defender with the city and county. He was also the former library commissioner when the first project blossomed in 1997. So here we are. And my neighbors are here. So Sonia's here, and we have a mutual friend. On the cover, this is one of the most prized photographs in the collection. It's toured and just always you see it a lot. And there's this individual here, and we can talk more a little bit. I got a text at 5:30 from one of the threads of community and homegrown children from my friend Karen Pacheco. Hi, Janet. Thanks for the invite, and apologies for the delayed reply. I'm working and will miss your event tonight. By the way, the photo of one of the women above was my mom's dear friend, Anita Sugatan. I think her daughter is Lisa. My mom is her godmother. And so there you have it, claiming our stories. This is a very deep collection, and we'll just keep going and have time afterwards. I just wanted to bring that to the forefront, that it really is something special. Thank you all for coming by.
Thank you, Janet. That's crazy. Very powerful. So the next passage being read is by Bailan Mihino, and she's going to be reading her own story. And it's called Dancing My Filipino Roots. Bailan Mihino is is the founder of the Global Dream Makers and creator of Dreammaker Matrix. She's a third-generation Filipino-American who advocates cultural awareness, history, and entrepreneurship to bridge cultures and countries. She has contributed to anthologies and publications. Today, Bailan has a podcast, holds global summits, and helps people transition to creating the life of their dreams. So, Mihino, come on up. Let's give her a round of applause, please. Yes, welcome.
I'm so excited, everybody. See this lady in the center, Anita Sugitan. No, this one.
No, and yeah, her.
This one. Okay, she was my mother's best friend. Wow. Until my mom and dad eloped. The next day, the friendship was over. Ooh. Mom and Dad didn't tell us about that. I had to find out from somebody else. So, dancing my Filipino roots. When I was growing up, I was just another kid. We didn't think of race or culture. In East Oakland, there were so many different cultures that not one stood out over another. In our elementary school, there were only 8 Filipinos out of more than 400 kids, but we never felt like minorities. We were all Americans. Then the Bayanihan Dance Company came to town. Never before had we seen such beauty and joy celebrating being Filipino. From the dramatic dances of the mountain tribes, they moved to the climactic dance of the silk-clad southern princess in Singil. Then the genteel courtships and swirling full skirts of the Spanish era followed, ending with the rural dances of skill from the provinces. We were mesmerized by the live music of the nose flute, the gangsa, the kulintan, and the rondalia. A whole unknown world that was our own had opened wide. Every Saturday morning, while my classmates sat glued to the TV watching cartoons, we piled into the station wagon and crossed the Bay Bridge. We sang songs from musicals to wake up and avoid boredom on our way to the folk dance classes at the San Francisco Filipino Community Hall on California Street. Practice started in mid-morning and continued until mid-afternoon. And for the first time, we were surrounded by lots of other Filipino kids. It was uncomfortable to be the new kids, the outsiders from across the bay, but we jumped in to learn the waltz. When we broke for lunch, the other mothers were clustered at the sunlit end of the long hall. "Come here, honey," one mother called to us. We walked over shyly and stood in the filtered sunlight. They looked at us curiously as she asked, "What is your name?" "Linda," I replied. "What is your last name, honey?" Her Filipino accent clearly landing on the honey. "Mahino. Linda Mahino." Are you Onofre's children? Oh my goodness, she said, with a lilt as she peered at me and my older sister. You look so much like him. It was as if one of my dad's old girlfriends suddenly came across him after more than 15 years. Turned out she knew my dad from his days at San Francisco State, before he transferred to UC Berkeley and met my mother. I never found out if she dated Dad, but Mom got definitely the once over before the ladies invited her over into their conversations. And from that moment on, we were part of the troupe. For each dance suite, I became a different person with a different attitude and entered totally different worlds in time. The transformation was complete when I stepped into hand-woven fabrics of the mountain tribes and imagined dancing in hilltop villages surrounded by forest and mountains. The Muslim suite always had a story, weaving through from sunrise prayer to the dramatic reenactment of the princess walking through the earthquake, accompanied by her ladies dressed in brightly embroidered and sequined silks. For me, a budding teenager, it was fun to flirt and dance in the flowing Maria Clara dresses with stiff net underskirts from the Spanish era, and to show off skills and balance and strength wearing rural blouses with flowered or plaid skirts and tuppies. There was something vaguely familiar, yet entirely new. The sounds, the feel of the fabric, the imagined aromas, and sunlight on my skin. Though we did not understand the words, we could sense the meaning of the songs we sang. Joyful chatter, camaraderie while planting rice, happy memories of a simple nipa hut home and its garden, the longings of love. Initially opposed to his children performing in public, my father was proud of our ability to embrace the culture he longed for. And all the dads, they dug out logs for wood mortars and carved heavy wood pestles so we could pound rice just as they remembered back home. We had big performances at the Masonic Hall on Nob Hill in San Francisco for the opening of the Philippine Center at San Francisco Main Library and in the July 4th parade. We danced at celebrations of the Laity Association and other regional organizations, and even performed for the patients at Laguna Honda Hospital, as well as the Manongs at the International Hotel. As time passed, I became more nimble and sure-footed, stepping and swirling, infusing just the right amount of style into my movements. At its peak, Muchanang Silangan had more than 70 dancers aged 8 to 22. We tried our very best to provide an experience as close to the Bayanihan Dance Company as we could. Practicing and performing the dances connected this American Filipino across the oceans to the Philippines. I knew it would only be a matter of time before I traveled to the land of my ancestors on a deeper journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Bailan. That was incredibly read, actually, as well. You should do audiobooks or something. So we've come to our last reading, and it's a special one because it's being read by the descendant of a legend. Bill Sorrow, I grew up reading in textbooks as a student at UC Santa Cruz. Along with Al Robles, Emil Guillermo, and many other legends and giants in our community, pioneered a movement around the international hotels, many of you might have heard, and the modern housing movement in San Francisco. And so Julio Sordo is here. We're so blessed to have him to read a poem that he wrote. And it's called My Dad is a Flower. I thought that was real cool. Julio Sordo is a third generation San Francisco Filipino American. He comes from a revolutionary bloodline of people in the city who have come out of places that others have seen as dark, but despite that has blossomed with light. He's a father of three. and we're lucky to have you, sir. Can I have you up to talk a little bit about your dad before you do the reading? And
Sure.
Amazing.
I'm still trying to figure what I'm supposed to be reading from the.
You do whatever you need.
oh yeah, we've got a book for you.
Like
Oh,
Alvarado
is
style.
it in the
You
book?
do it-
Yeah, it's
you
in
do
there.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's in
here,
the
I
book.
give you this book. God bless you. God bless you.
We've been trying to
But
communicate.
this is my
so-
favorite story right here.
Oh yeah, that's.
The
Oh, you want
people-
me to read that one or the one I wrote?
Okay, you're not. Okay,
we've
focus,
been
focus, Julio, focus.
We've been playing phone tag for like 3
focus.
weeks now.
What page is he on? My
Oh,
dad.
there we go. See, I did it on
All
my cell phone. Okay.
right, go.
Thank you.
Do what you do.
Do
The
what
way
I
we
do.
Right? Go over there and make picket signs. Jack.
It's a long poem. Hi everybody. It's been a while since kind of been out and hanging out with people like this. It feels kind of like at home again. It's real nice. You know.
Wait. What have you been up to?
I'm a high school teacher. I've been
There you
teaching for like 20 years. I'm a health teacher, and it's actually interesting. Been talking a lot about fathers, and in health class, we talk about a lot of fathers that ain't in our lives, kids' lives, and how much that affected them. And so blessed to have a father that has been, and trying to also be the same father, be a father present in my children's lives as well. So this is nice to be here, and thank you.
Thank you.
And we met at a pool table
Yes.
playing. You were drinking.
Yeah. No, I
Some
don't
o-
drink
oh,
anymore.
we're-
You were drinking. I
You
was
was
trying to
drinking
talk to
soda.
you.
and they were salsa dancing, and I was kind of tired, so I went to go play pool. Me and my
Yeah,
dad used to
I
always
went
play pool.
salsa dancing.
Am I in it? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, let me
yeah.
talk in it. Okay.
Come on, I was like, yelling out the car window.
And then we met.
Mondi's.
And then
Mondi's.
yeah, and then
Yes.
you're like, oh,
You got a
Julia,
good
boom,
memory.
boom, 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 boom. Oh, I know you, and kind of been like an auntie kind of around
Oh.
since that time. So actually, the truth is, this is the second time I ever read this poem. The first time I read this poem, there's a very famous place in New York called the New York Cafe. Y'all know about that? Where all the Puerto Rican poets used to be. So it's open night, and I had wrote this because my dad, he was diagnosed with cancer, and we was trying to find it, figure it out, and then I said, you know what? Let me start writing something out for my dad, and I wanted to really just take a history of his life, so grandchildren and children and people like yourselves could just understand through kind of a poem form. And so I read it there, and he was actually in the audience, and everybody before was doing all the poems, and then I kind of wrote this one with my dad, and I was all crying. He's all out there. So it's the second time I wrote it. First time without my dad there. And I called it My Dad as a Flower because my dad on his left shoulder right here, he had like a tattoo of a flower. And I remember as a little kid coming into like manhood and figuring that out, I asked him, why do you got a flower? And he said he used to have his name there for like a skull. And it's like that. And he's like, that's stupid. I know my name. So I'm put a flower over it. And then the other tattoos, his uncles burned them off. So he had like these big old burns and a flower. And then, making full circle to the flower, in many traditions, in the native traditions in this area and south of the border and those type of things, they say that the hummingbird is an ancestor. So when my dad was fighting with cancer and it's hard, like, we're going to beat it. And there's all this suffering and the chemo and all of that stuff. And I remember we're out on the porch and I just saw, I saw my dad and a hummingbird came like right here. And then I was like, oh, wow. And like this like life just froze, and that was the only thing that was moving at that moment. But you could just see the wings. And I went out there, and I remember my dad, he just said, that was your auntie, and it's my time to go. And I was like, damn. Wow. But it released a lot, and then it was like, it was sad, but then it was like, fuck, all right, we could let the suffering go. So that's why I said my dad is a flower, and only hummingbirds come to flowers. So there's a lot in here, and I'm not going to read all that. I know it's late, but my family, they came out the Fillmore district of San Francisco, which was the black community of San Francisco, like the heart of it. My grandfather came. It's actually interesting you're reading, because my grandfather on the way here from the Philippines, he went to Hawaii for 3 years. So I was like, that was the program. And but he worked for Dole for 3 years over there, and he worked, but this is even earlier, it's in the 20s. And he ended up in Salinas. Long story short, he's up here in San Francisco, and my dad is out of 9 brothers and sisters. My dad was the last one left, and he grew up in the Fillmore. Some of the first stories I had, and was my dad. His first job was 11 years old, and he used to sell. It's called the Sun Reporter, and the people here would know. It's the oldest black newspaper west of New York City. My dad used to walk down Fillmore Street, and he used to sell it to all the community there. And it's Filipino community where Uncle Al Robles is from. So they grew up in the middle of the black community. And his stories, he used to tell me he saw his favorite was Miles Davis. Miles Davis. My dad used to tell me, he said, get a liquor, and all the white people used to come to watch black people play music, and he used to sell them liquor. And then he saw Miles Davis come out, and then Miles Davis smoking a cigarette. He's like, I want to be like you. And then he threw a cigarette on the other way, and he said, just keep practicing. So he has all these beautiful stories of growing up in the Fillmore district of San Francisco. And that's where people like the music, Flip Nunez grew up in the household, Afro-Filipino and ordinary guy. And those are like just the things coming up in the vibrations that always came through the house of growing up in the Fillmore district. And that's where the story in the book, A Pickle for a Son, he used to trade the newspaper and he'd go to Jewish deli, they give him a pickle. And so that's where it actually came from right there. But my dad also knew that they were poor and they were on welfare and they got laughed upon. And his experience in the Catholic Church wasn't a good one. He's like, why are we giving them money? So my dad went to Catholic Church, excuse anybody if you're real religious in the church. And his mom used to, my grandmother used to give him a penny, and he put that penny in, and he'd take a nickel out and put it in his pocket. So I think this, he's like, this makes no sense. We're the brokest ones in here. I'm not giving you nothing. So I think early on, my dad, and this is the time that he said, all my uncles, all your brothers, they used to go down to Hunters Point, and bananas probably coming from Hawaii, come off the boat, and they said, I was down there 12 years old, but bananas on my shoulder, $5, all day long. So that's kind of, I grew up there in San Francisco in the Fillmore district. Long story short, my dad, he graduated from Balboa High School before all the Filipinos were at Balboa. He's like the first. I always tell Rudy Corpez that. I was like, bro, you young, be quiet. So by the age of 4, by the age of 22, my dad had 4 kids. And all the Sorrels in San Francisco lived in all the projects. Sunnydale, Petrillo Hill, Valencia Gardens, Army Street, they lived in all the projects. And just raising the kids up in the projects, and it was hard. And my dad he attributed dancing saved my father's life. And he said because he said all around him, his brothers were dying, people, drugs, all the things you could imagine. And so my dad started dancing back in the Fillmore district, West Side Story. So he started dancing, and that's what brought my father to Cuba. And my mother and father met in Cuba in 1968 in the middle of the Cuban Revolution. And my father said, first it was dancing saved my life. So every time I go dancing, my dad is with me. And I ain't been dancing in a while though, because the COVID and all that stuff. So I just dance at home and stuff. And then he met my mother there, and with my father, and important to know about like coming from the International Hotel and the housing movement, they are definitely believers in socialism. They did not believe capitalism is a future for the people. And they still believe that to this day. So when he came back from Cuba, and the awakening was, he said that, it's the first time in my life I've seen brown people who weren't all messed up, fucked up. Second-class citizens touring. I seen them. They was the bus drivers and the teachers and the doctors. So he says, when I come home, I knew what I'm going to dedicate my life to being. That's going to be a revolutionary. And it's always out of love. It was love for the people. So he met my mom. A few later, I come on out. And my mother and father moved into the International Hotel in 1973, and they're married there. And their wedding, it looks just like this. It's like 700 people there, 5 pigs everywhere. Uncle Al was there, all of that. And going back, actually, Uncle Al Robles, he was the oldest of 7, and my father's was the youngest of 9. And later in life, as you know, they became this beautiful tandem. And it's funny, I was hearing some people. I remember when me, my dad, and Uncle Al, we went down to Manzanar. And I used to take a group of kids from City College, and I had to smoke some weed that night. And then they smoked some weed, and I was listening to them. They had the sleeping bags, and they were just talking about little kids, about these memories of growing up. And Uncle Al starts playing. He gets up and starts singing. And it was just the most beautiful memories of growing up together, just growing up. And he was the youngest. My dad and Uncle Al was the elder there. So I want to share, my father came back as a revolutionary, and that's where the spirit of the International Hotel was there with the Kearney Street Workshop, the Mabuhay Gardens, Miller Cafe, the pool hall, and all of them things was all there. And later he became an iron worker until his back gave out. And then he started working in housing, and then he got back involved on 6th Street and 16th Street, and then in the Mission District, where he was really loved. And also, so if you know right there on 6th Street in Howard, if you know that building where all the furniture is, it's named after Bill Sorrell. And then if you know, and my uncle Rich Sorrell is a legend from the Mission. and down by the Giants game, the first affordable housing was named after him as well. So, and these were people. They were loved by the people, and they fought with the people. They fought with, for our people, and the struggle continues. But I think the last thing that I'd want to share is still he's my father. For all, there's a lot of things for a lot of people. He's still my father. So I'll just read the last paragraph here. And I wrote this in 2007 or 6 or 7, maybe it was 2007. And it says, as I encounter my struggles as both a man and father, I hear and trust your words. Love takes patience and care. For your life has been one of struggle, the last sorrow left out of 8 brothers and a sister. You chose freedom over death, sacrificed all you had for your family. Son, I got involved with the movement because I had no choice. It's either ride or die. You have come so far against so many odds to remain so beautifully strong. I guess this is what a true revolutionary is about, Dad. He always used to say, son, there ain't no secrets. You just got to keep on. Yeah, Dad. Just like the rose that grew out of the cracks of the concrete. That was from my father.
Amen. Thank you.
Man, that was awesome. That was awesome. I love hearing stories about the city, especially the OGs. Thank you, Julio. Appreciate that. So that concludes our readings for tonight. I'm going to invite Janet to kind of close it out. But I'm going to remind everybody to please, if you haven't already picked up a copy of the book, please do 1 or 2 on your way out. It helps keep the project alive and the lights on, and to keep the roadshow going, and to continue to tell these stories, really important stories. And it's just really beautifully written. So I got to say, personally, I really like it. I think you will too. So with that, thank you all so much for coming this evening to tonight's book reading. It's the 20th anniversary edition. Again, we're celebrating Ricardo's birthday just a couple of days ago. And so Janet, why don't you come on up and close it out for us?
Okay. I will. Real fast, because everybody needs to go to work tomorrow, right? So over there is a little blue thing. It's a poem that came from our show last year where John Calloway graced us with some music and played. And it's entitled Mothers. Mother's Day is just around the corner because, it's because of our mothers that we are here, us Manong kids. And that's another thing that we want to explore in our next upcoming, hopefully, anthology or project. But I just want to say thank you for coming out. Have some empanada and water back there. And I just want to say hello to some of the people that helped me build this project that are here from the past, the present, and continue to love on Ricardo, love on the project. John, thank you for coming, really. It's good to see you. Bill's kid is here. It just feels like a family night for me, but with guests. And thank you. We welcome you to really, really not just buy the book because we need, support, but to share these stories with others and help us to really continue letting the younger ones lift this project and this legacy up and forward. Talk to one another, mingle, share stories about the city and the community. So I want to just point out some people here. Really, I have to say this or I'd be remiss. So my neighbors are here, but I'm going to start with people that knew me from when I was that underling. I don't know if Julio was born yet, but, it was his folks. They're not here. Ernie Lorente is here. I just want him to stand up because, you look at this man and he just looks like a man. But we were a lot younger then. We all had black hair, blah, blah, blah. And, you just never know who you're sitting next to. And he was a kid here in the city. They grew up in, where was it? Potrero?
Hunters Point, Potrero Hill.
There you go. And he is an accomplished attorney. He's a gentleman. He went to UC Davis. He was the first batch of law students there. So there's some really, and I'm proud of that. I'm not trying to brag. I barely got a BA because I was like, Julia, I probably need to be in detention or something. But, you're very bright, but you're so naughty. It's like, okay, whatever. I probably have ADD, whatever. But so my brother's here. He flanked me for many, many years. Joseph Alvarado, stand up. He's so shy, but he's so humble. Went to Berkeley. My friend Joe Cowan, who's also been a great big part of this project. supporter. Edwin, we've come up the ranks. I think we knew each other when I was a student, and you might have been already teaching, because Lisa was also a teacher, and that's his colleague in that wonderful, magnificent Filipino American Writers Association. So we are grateful to everybody that's doing the work, the hard, fucked up hard work to get our stories out. We work hard at this. And my dad's collection is now, I'm proud of this, at Stanford University. And when I drove up and Rob and I had to do a meet and greet, it's quite something. And I really encourage you to follow our project on Instagram. The kids are putting that all together. You are all invited to that opening in May to see the work in their rotunda. A few images were selected to go, and we're hanging at the Cantor. This is my dad. He could not go to this, to college, let alone have opportunity. So for my family, that's a big deal. And I share that pride with, people like John Calloway. We give back to our parents. We give back to our ancestors. We give back to the city in lots of ways, and we're quiet. Marianne, thank you for coming out and supporting this project. If you don't know her, she's like, I'm calling her the unofficial mayor of Chenery Street or Glen Park. She does a lot for the neighborhood, and we grew up together. She's a little younger than me, so and there are friends here also like Bailan and everybody that participated tonight. They don't work for quote free. They work because it needs to get done. So thank you for helping me do the work together. And Marnie, thank you as well. And my neighbors, of course. And my niece, the younger ones, I want them to stand up. Alohi, Frankie, where are you? She's hiding over here. And Ricky. So they're going to put something spectacular on for April 8th. So please come and follow us. Please, please come. It's free, and we have food. Just come. You want to throw money in the little fishbowl. You'll know when I have an event. You'll get a nice letter and a nice card and all of that. And we do what we can, the best we can. And again, I love you all, my family here. And yeah, so that's it. Have some snacks, and thank you for coming out. Did I thank Rob and Eric? Okay. Thank you, guys.